Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar, which will give you an overview of measurement, analysis, and improvement according to ISO 9001-2015. My name is Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗧𝗿𝗶𝘀𝗲. I do quite a lot of ISO 9001 consulting and training. Still, I also audit as the lead auditor. So today, I will share my thoughts about measurement, analysis, and improvement according to ISO. So my presentation will last about 40 minutes, followed by a 20-minute question and answer session. If you have a question, you don't need to wait for the Q&A session. Feel free to ask it during my presentation. And so submit your question. Naturally, during the Q&A session, I'll also address your remaining inquiries, okay? So, you can download the PDF handout of this presentation and access links to articles that will be published during it, okay? Later, we'll send you an email with a link to the recording of this webinar and the list of articles mentioned. And by the way, today's going to be a different kind of presentation because I'm recovering from a virus or something like that really knocked me out. So I'll need to go slower than usual and take more breaks to drink water, okay? So let's go. So if you ask, why is this presentation important? My answer is that we aim to ensure that measurement leads to action, avoids wasted data, and promotes genuine improvements in quality and performance. So this presentation will show how to measure, analyze, and improve performance in a ISO 9001 QMS. And we developed this webinar for quality managers, process owners, and decision makers responsible for monitoring and improving performance, okay? Now, here's our agenda for today. So we'll begin by discussing the significance of measurement, followed by what exactly should be measured. Once we understand what to measure, we will then address how to effectively plan those measurements. After gathering data, the next step involves transforming raw data into meaningful information through analysis. And based on this evaluation, we must determine when and how to take action. Therefore, we'll explore when and how to improve. And then we'll discuss common barriers to corrective actions and improvement toward the end. And finally, we'll address the main challenges based on the questions received through email before this webinar, okay? Now, let's go to the why, the question why. So imagine an IT support team responsible for ensuring system uptime. So they assume everything is running smoothly because they only respond to major incidents. However, unnoticed system slowdowns and minor outages keep happening, frustrating users. Eventually, a critical failure occurs, bringing down the entire system for hours. Upon investigation, they realized that early warning signs had been present all along. Things like spiking server loads, increasing response times, and a growing backlog of unresolved tickets. But no one was measuring them consistently. So, without proper measurement and monitoring, IT teams operate reactively instead of proactively. Early detection through KPIs like system uptime, response time, server load, and unresolved tickets allows organizations to predict failures, improve service, and prevent costly downtime. So measurement provides visibility and control over quality, helps detect deviations before they turn into failures, prevents reactive management, firefighting mode versus proactive action. So measuring performance isn't just about fixing problems when they happen. It's about determining and preventing issues before they escalate. It's something that is very common. People think that correcting things, returning things to the normal when they have a problem is improvement. No, that's not improvement. That's returning to the current status. Improvement is changing the current status, okay? Now, so have you ever been in a meeting where people discuss dozens of metrics, but at the end, no one knows what really matters? So not all measurements drive quality or improvement. So what should we truly measure? To make measurements meaningful, we can classify key metrics into 4 main categories. Customer satisfaction. So how happy are our customers? Do they have complaints? Are we meeting their expectations? Process performance. So are our operations efficient? Do we have defects or bottlenecks? Or supplier and external providers. Are our vendors delivering on time and with the right quality? And product service quality. So are we producing products or services that meet specifications and avoid rework? So just because something is measurable doesn't mean it should be measured. So let's examine a few examples of selecting the right indicators. So imagine a call center that measures the number of calls per hour. It sounds logical. Higher numbers mean more productivity, right? But what if those calls aren't solving problems? Now, let's compare that to a call center that measures issue resolution on the first call, meaning how often the customer's problem is solved without requiring a follow-up. Which of these truly improves customer satisfaction? The second one, of course. It aligns with quality, efficiency, and customer satisfaction instead of just counting activities. The right metric focuses on the outcome, not just the activity. Now, let's look at an IT example. So a software development team tracks the number of code lines written. The more, the better, right? But does writing more code means better software? Not really. What if we instead measure the number of bugs found in production? So this tells us how stable and reliable the software is for users. More lines of code will mean more complexity and more potential errors. So again, the question is, are we tracking output or are we tracking quality? So if a metric doesn't help us improve or make better decisions, it's probably the wrong one. To summarize, measuring too much or the wrong things can lead to wasted effort and false confidence. So always ask, does this metric help us improve performance, customer satisfaction, or decision making? Well, last week I was working with a company designing their dashboard and discussing what to measure and monitor. And one of the topics was people choose indicators that help them perform well in front of top management, okay? But then they complain that they don't have resources and top management responds, but everything is fine with your department's performance. Why do you need more resources? Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, when we use indicators or KPIs that they give us a good image, but are not good for the performance or the quality of our QMS, okay, or our process. Now, I leave here links for some articles. So practical tips for measuring your QMS according to ISO 9001. The other one is how to write good quality objectives. And the other one is how to define It seems we had here a break. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Now I think you can hear me. Okay. So we had here a break. Sorry, some problem with the connection. So I was presenting the links, So related with this topic. So the practical tips for measuring your QMS according to ISO 9001. How to write good quality objectives, and how to define key performance indicators for a QMS based on ISO 9001. Okay. Now, I was saying that we have a question here from Brandy. Brandy asked, as a small API manufacturer, primarily in the development and early clinical phase, we often have limited historical data compared to larger established companies. What are some practical strategies we can implement early to establish a baseline and track process consistency, even with small batch sizes and frequent process changes? Okay, so I would say start with process mapping, okay, and determining the critical process parameters, okay. Even with small batch sizes, map out your key processes and identify the critical process parameters, okay. Things like temperature, reaction time, mixing speed, okay. And use statistical tools for like, for example, short run SPC, short run statistical process control. For me, it was a surprise when I learned about short run SPC. So perhaps it's useful. Use also design of experiments, like Taguchi methods. I remember using Taguchi methods, and wow, fantastic. So perhaps, okay. Regarding the kinds of KPIs, perhaps process cycle time, impurity profile, well, some things like that, okay. Now let's continue. Okay. Okay, so how to plan measurement. Okay, so imagine a factory producing automotive parts. The team decides to measure total parts produced per shift as their key performance indicator. Okay, so total parts produced per shift as their key performance indicator. After all, the more parts produced, the better, right? But soon, customer complaints increase and returns skyrocket. Okay, why? Because they didn't measure defect rates or rework costs, just production volume. So measuring without proper planning can lead to the wrong priorities and unexpected failures. So we often assume that measuring anything is better than measuring nothing. However, poor measurement planning can waste time, lead to bad decisions, and result in missed improvement opportunities. So before selecting metrics, consider the following questions. What is the real purpose behind the measurement? We'll be responsible for collecting and analyzing the data. How will the data be used to make decisions? Is the measurement reliable and consistent? Now, let's see now the key elements of a measurement plan. Now, define, okay, let me see here, define the right KPI. So instead of just tracking total parts produced, measure first pass yield, percentage of defect-free parts produced the first time. So you need to first define a good KPI, all right? Then assign ownership. The production team collects the data while quality control reviews it. Then standardize the methodology. Use the same sampling method, time intervals, and defect classification to ensure consistent results. And I could tell you stories. You could not believe me about what people sometimes do. Yeah, about this. Then make sure it's actionable. So if we detect if the defect rate exceeds 2%, a corrective action process should automatically trigger, something like that. Okay. Now, planning measurement is not just about choosing a number to track. It's about selecting meaningful data that drives better decisions and real improvements. So before you measure anything, ask yourself, will this data help us improve or just create numbers on a dashboard? As I said before, this standardized methodology is the most critical step, okay? So you will have a signal, raw KPI data, that needs to be processed to turn data into insight. That's the trick, turning data into insight. It's what you want. And then output, a decision and an action. Now, processing is the core step and requires what? Discipline. So is required to collect data accurately. It requires good analysis. So good analysis needed to extract meaningful patterns, and discussions to ensure different perspectives validate insights, and decision-making translates data into real-world actions. Okay, so this is about how to plan measurement. So clause 9.1.1b and c are about monitoring and measuring methods and frequency. So methods are about being systematic and being comparable. We don't want to start having doubts about whether the variation recorded is real or just the result of our way of measuring or monitoring. So for example, what is a complaint? Okay. For many years, I worked in a company as a quality manager, and for me, a complaint was very easy. A complaint is something that we receive by fax at the time, by fax, and sometimes, yeah, by fax, by phone. Okay, it was like that. But then, as a consultant, I started to work with construction companies, and when the customer goes to the construction site and says, this is not good, this is not, can you consider that a complaint? It's up to you, but we need to have a standard to define what is a complaint. I remember that we decided that whenever the the remark was done not to the manager of the construction site, but to someone in the headquarters, that's a complaint. Yeah, for example. So we want to be sure. We want to be sure of what are we measuring. So when you sell up, so planning requires a definition of what to measure, what are the indicators to follow, what is the measurement method, because we want to use the same method, okay? The data source, the measurement frequency. So the lower the frequency, the less feedback, the less the feedback, the less the opportunities for doing something to change course if needed. The target, the difference between abnormal and normal performance. And I see so much weirdness tied to goal setting, okay? Some to make people look good, some to avoid issues with auditors. So if you accept a terrible performance as the target, there is no need to improve, okay? But I really sometimes see targets that are, I don't know, it's awful. So it's like they decide that they given up on trying to improve, okay? Then we have who is responsible for measuring and the review frequency. So you may have a different frequency for measuring than for review, okay? Now, I leave you the link for 2 articles, Making the Best Out of ISO 9001 Quality Plan and Analysis of Measuring and Monitoring Requirements in ISO 9001 2015. Okay? Now, what is the best frequency for analysis? Okay, so imagine a factory where machine breakdowns frequently occur. The maintenance team reviews downtime reports just once per month. By the time they notice a trend, production has already suffered major disruptions. In contrast, another factory monitors machine performance weekly and takes preventive measures before breakdowns occur. Which one do you think has fewer stoppages and lower maintenance costs? So, why does frequency of analysis matter? Well, not all data needs to be analyzed at the same frequency. The key is to match the review frequency with the impact of the issue. So if something can cause significant damage, like safety failures or machine breakdowns, it should be analyzed frequently. Let's break this down into 3 levels, okay? So high impact areas, so real-time or daily monitoring is required. Process performance, like defect rate, so weekly or monthly analysis is recommended, and strategic indicators like customer satisfaction, perhaps quarterly or annually is the best frequency. So if an issue can cause serious problems, review it frequently. If it's a long-term trend, review it periodically. Critical processes, it's a sign for high frequency analysis. So think about a key process in your factory. Are you analyzing it at the right frequency, or are you realizing problems too late? Think about that. Okay. Now comes analysis of results. So an overwhelming table, you have there a table of numbers, messy, small font, cluttered on one side, and a simple, clear graph showing trends on the other side. Which one tells the story better? Now, looking at numbers without context is like trying to navigate in the dark, confusing and full of guesswork. Many organizations spend hours collecting data, but fail to extract useful insights from it. Have you ever sat in a meeting where a huge table of numbers was presented and everyone was struggling to make sense of it? Then someone turns that data into a graph and suddenly the trend becomes obvious. That's the power of visualizing and analyzing data correctly. So collecting data is easy, but making sense of it is the real challenge. If we don't analyze it properly, we risk making the wrong decisions. Data is just numbers. Analysis is about turning numbers into meaningful information. Now, imagine a company sees their defect rate is, let's say, 5%. Is that good or bad? It depends, okay? So it depends. Without context, the number is meaningless. Tables are precise, but graphs tell the story better. So if I show you a table with 12 months of data, you might spend minutes trying to figure out the pattern. But if I put the same data into a graph, you'll spot the trend in seconds. So I still remember graphing the average monthly particle size that came out of our chemical reactor and clearly seeing the influence of the average water temperature, particles growing from the end of winter to summer, and particles decreasing from the end of summer to winter. Comparing single data points is misleading. You need trends over time. So if last month's defect rate was 4% and this month is 5%, should we panic? Well, not necessarily. So if we look at 12 months trend, we might see that fluctuations are normal, or we might spot a dangerous upward trend that needs urgent action. Therefore, I like to use and recommend statistical process control and statistical process control for individual values, something that we can use for KPIs, to better interpret, to make better sense of the signals that the process sends us. So I recommend, so this is one of the things that I recommend very, very much. The other thing is, I recommend also check the Deming funnel to understand the dangers of acting when we shouldn't, okay? Variability exists. It can be normal or abnormal. And the SPC helps us distinguish one from the other. And the Deming funnel is an experiment, very, very interesting, that illustrates very easily the problem when we start to acting on any signal, okay? And last topic in this slide is simplify your dashboard with sparklines, okay? So sparklines are your best friend. Compact, clear, and powerful mini graphs that provide instant insights. And I would say that we are in 2025, and most of the companies that I audit still use just tables to present results, okay? Just tables to present the results. Try graphs, try the sparklines, okay? Now, what is analysis of results? No? Imagine two companies facing the same problem. Customer complaints are increasing, okay? Rising customer complaints. Team A shrugs it off. Well, it's just a bad quarter, they say. So they keep working as usual, assuming the problem will fix itself. But over the next few months, complaints keep rising and soon customers start leaving. Team B takes a different approach. Instead of making assumptions, they look at trends over the past 12 months. They compare their performance with industry standards and set up root cause analysis. They discover that 80% of complaints come from a single recurring issue, which they quickly address, reducing complaints by 40% in the next quarter. So which team do you think survives the next year? Yeah, okay. So if you're only looking at last month's number, you're missing the big picture. Analyzing data over time is fundamental. Comparing it with goals and benchmarks provides context, and using root cause analysis are the keys to making the right decision. So this mistake is more common than you think, okay? When I see dashboards like this with this kind of representations to show the performance, yeah, you see, here with this, you cannot see the trend. So, yeah. Now, I leave here a link for an article called How to Implement the Check Phase Performance Evaluation in the QMS according to ISO 9001. Now, here, what I would like to say about this is, yeah, okay, yeah. So use graphic, okay, use sparklines, use graphics, use SPC, check for the trend, okay. Now, when to improve. So imagine driving a car, the fuel gauge shows low, but you think, it's probably fine. You ignore it until the car stops in the middle of the highway. Now you're stuck, okay? The signs were there, but you waited too long to take action. And this happens in business all the time. Problems appear, but because they're not urgent yet, companies delay improvements until it's too late. So the simple rule, every deviation is an opportunity to act. Yeah, of course, every deviation is indeed an opportunity to act, but beware, okay, beware of the Deming funnel trap, okay? So immediate unplanned reactions to each minor deviation usually amplify variation instead of reducing it. So use control charts to distinguish between normal process fluctuations and significant changes needing action. Always investigate special causes first, determine root causes, and then implement structured, informed solutions. So a company should decide to improve performance when facing situations such as failure to meet established objectives or targets, So when indicator results fail to meet previously defined targets, it signals that the process is not delivering the expected level of performance. And by the way, when you use control charts and you fail to meet established objectives or targets, you may realize that the problem is not with your process, but the problem is with your target. Because you can see something like this. So the process is okay, is under control, is doing the best it can, providing the best performance it can, but cannot achieve the target. This means that what we need to do is change the process, okay, or define or redefine the target, okay. So another deviation that may require an action is negative trends or deteriorating results over time. So if performance consistently worsening, even if it still meets minimum targets, it becomes necessary to intervene before results become unacceptable. Okay, so the other one is increasing complaints or customer dissatisfaction. So indicators reflecting customer satisfaction, such as rising complaints, negative reviews, or customer loss, should prompt improvements in product or service performance. And increase in internal or external nonconformity, so frequent errors, reward, or rejections indicate that the process is out of control and improvements are needed. Unfavorable benchmarking or comparison with external best practices. So when comparison with other companies or sector standards reveal that the organization's performance fall below industry benchmarks. So for example, in last century, so we were in the 90s, I was working with an hospital, a public hospital, hospital from the state, and trying to improve performance. And when I said let's try to improve performance to reduce the costs of the hospital, they said, that's not our purpose. That's not part of our job description. Okay, but one of the medical non-person of the medical staff approached me and said, Carlos, change your approach. Present like this. So this is our current performance, and this is the performance of the benchmark in Europe regarding this and this topic. And they considered, when presented that way, for them it was like something personal. Yeah. And then the need to reduce cost or waste. Yeah, poor operational performance resulting in high costs, waste, or inefficiency indicates an immediate need for improvement. So in summary, the decision to improve performance should be guided by a rigorous analysis of indicator results, feedback from customers and stakeholders, audit findings, management review outcomes, and the external context of the organization. So ISO 9001 also emphasizes proactive actions. Organizations should act before problems escalate, anticipate negative trends, and continuously seek opportunities for improvement. And this is very, very important. So emphasizes proactive actions. Organizations should act before problems escalate, anticipate negative trends. We'll speak about that when we see the barriers to improvement. Now, I will show you. So you can see there the PDCA cycle, so the improvement cycle, but you can see also the SDCA cycle. That's not so well known, is the process control cycle. And it's something like this. So you have a standard, okay? A standard is, you have a standard, and your standard may be written or not, no problem. It's the way you do the job, okay? So it's the rules for doing the job, and you do the job. So you have a standard, you follow the standard, and then you check the results. And when the results are, and based on the results, you act. And if everything is okay, you continue inside this cycle. It's the process control cycle, everything is okay, you continue here, okay? Now, what is happening is here is something like this. A nonconformity happens or a deviation happens. We treat the nonconformity and then we ask, is it solved? No, okay, we go back and we continue here. But when it is solved, we ask, do we need to improve? Okay, and if yes, okay, then we need to start an improvement based on an event. Okay, and what is that? So when we go to that SDCA cycle, our conclusion is something like this. Okay, we cannot trust in our standard anymore. We need a new standard. How do we develop a new standard? We jump into the PDCA cycle, the improvement cycle. What we do is we plan an experiment. We do the experiment, we run the experiment. We check the results and we act. And if we don't agree with the result, if we don't like the result, what we need to do is we need to do another experience, another experiment, run the experience, and so and so and so. And when we agree that, okay, yeah, I like this approach, this experiment is effective, so now we upgrade, or not upgrade, we update our standard. Okay, so now this is, here is corrective action, here is nonconformity. Now even if you decide that to do a corrective action, from time to time, you need periodically to prepare a performance report, okay? And you look into that performance report and you check if you need to improve. Okay, if you don't need to improve, the end of story. But if you decide to improve, okay, you have a calendar-based improvement. So this one here is continual improvement. It's not generated because of one event in particular, but because you saw the big picture. Okay, so you can see here the link between nonconformities, corrective actions, continual improvement, and the two cycles. Okay, so as I asked, corrective action is mandatory in ISO 9001. I want to know whether correction is mandatory or not in ISO 9001. Now, correction is mandatory in ISO 9001 whenever a nonconformity is identified, okay? The organization must act to eliminate it, okay? Correction is elimination of nonconformity, so we need always to do, is mandatory, we need to do a correction, okay? But I cannot agree with your statement. Corrective action is mandatory in ISO 9001. No, corrective action is not always mandatory. So it is required only when there is a risk of recurrence or when the nonconformity is significant enough to warrant deeper action. So please check clause 10.21b. The decision to implement corrective action depends on the severity and likelihood of recurrence. Okay. Now, I leave here a link for an article called Complete Guide to Corrective Action versus Preventive Action. Okay. Okay. Now, let me show here. Okay. So yeah, I think you can see here. You can see a lot of documents that I've been speaking here in our ISO 9001 Premium Toolkit. Okay, so this is the list of documents. Okay, so we have here procedures, forms, we have instructions. Yeah, okay, so I will show you this one, the quality plan. I will show you this procedure for management of nonconformities and corrective actions. And I will show you this monitoring of customer satisfaction. Okay, so let me try to show you. So one is this one. So the quality plan, you can see here the quality plan. Let me put this, okay, something like this, where we have, okay, the activity, the characteristic, what is under control, the quality characteristic under control, person responsible for process control, frequency, method of monitoring and measurement. Okay, this is an example. The other example is, okay, procedure for management of nonconformities and corrective actions. And by the way, so these are Word documents, so they are completely customized. You can customize to the way you like it. Okay, so we have here the nonconformities, the corrective actions. So things like, okay, nonconformities. You have here some comments that can help you do this. Okay, so the step-by-step for the corrective action. And the last one is this one for the monitoring, an example, monitoring of customer satisfaction. Okay, so again, another example, what can be used for measuring and monitoring in our management system. Okay, so now, Mesh is asking, is root cause analysis mandatory for every nonconformity? And if so, does it make corrective actions mandatory? No, root cause analysis is not mandatory for every nonconformity. Okay, again, it's like this. If it's like this, that's why the funnel experiment is very, very important to be studied. Okay, because if we, after a normal system has variability, okay, and if we, because of a small deviation, we go after the root cause and we make changes in the system, we are inflating, we are augmenting the variability of the system. So root cause analysis is not mandatory for every nonconformity, okay? What we need to do is we need to correct every nonconformity. And then we need to think, or we need to evaluate if a corrective action is needed. So correction is remove the nonconformity. Corrective action is removing the cause of the nonconformity. Okay, and so be careful with that. Okay, now. Okay, so how to improve good practices, clause 10.2 and 10.3. So imagine a logistics company struggling with late deliveries. Okay, every week they rush to solve delays, adding more drivers, changing schedules, but the problem keeps coming back. Then they decide to analyze the root cause. Instead of treating the symptom, late deliveries, they dig deeper and find the real issue, poor planning. By implementing the PDCA and root cause analysis, they reduce delays by 30% in just 6 months. So what is the lesson? Small fixes don't lead to real improvement. Structured problem solving does. So improvement isn't about luck. It's about using the right methods. When you decide to improve, you embark on a journey. So decide who will lead the project, explain the why, explain why we need to improve, show the importance, show the context, show the pain, show the potential benefits, okay? So the improvement team should study the current situation, use tools like Pareto charts, histograms, and flowcharts to see the challenge with different lenses. Set improvement targets, so the desired outcome and success metrics. So later we'll help evaluate the effectiveness of actions. Be aware of over-ambitious goals. they will take a long time and eat all initial momentum. Start small. Small step will train your team in the methodology. Early successes will motivate and build confidence. Don't forget the progress principle. Okay, look for that progress principle. Fantastic for motivation. So, for example, we need to speed up deliveries. They're taking too long. We need to go to reduce the average delivery time for our warehouse to local customers from 4 days to 2 days within the next 90 days. So find the root cause or causes behind the challenge, ask the 5 whys, use the fishbone diagram, check sheets, and look for correlations. So I leave here links for 2 articles, how to use quality controls to improve your QMS, and about the use of the 5 whys. Check this article, how to use root cause analysis to support corrective actions in your QMS. Craig is asking, typically how many KPIs should be measured and what would these be for a manufacturing plant? Oh, that will depend on the staff that you have, okay? So if I work with a small, medium enterprise, 60-person company, I cannot expect that they have time or structure to see more than, I don't know, 15 in the KPIs. Okay, some will be checked every month, some will be checked every quarter, some will be checked annually. Okay, but if I'm working with if I'm working with a company with 500, okay, normally they have a structure, they have the staff for checking much more, okay, much more. And what will these be for a manufacturing plant? Okay, I would focus my attention in something that is not in ISO 9001. Is okay, what is more related with the competitive advantages of the company? Okay, so yeah, look for that. So let's continue here. Okay, so determine. So we went after the root cause analysis. We determine alternative countermeasures, evaluate possible solutions, choose the solution, plan implementation. Okay, so we'll do what until when, what resources are needed, check implementation, report results, evaluate effectiveness. If okay, return to the SDCA cycle and standardize or modify the standard. Okay, so what can go wrong with this journey or in this journey in an organization? So is there a calendar for analysis and evaluation? Are performance targets set? Do we believe that improvement is about changing the system and not about blaming people? Who is leading the improvement journey? What kind of training do you provide to people participating in the improvement team? So they start defending themselves and their people. They mix motives with causes. They don't use improvement tools. So many companies, they don't have this basic knowledge. So they don't test hypotheses. They don't do any follow-up. Top management doesn't follow up and doesn't celebrate success. We need to celebrate success, okay? So, right. Now, I'm very late, but okay. No. Now, let's see the common barriers. Okay, we measure, we analyze, we even propose corrective actions, yet things don't really improve. Sound familiar? Let's talk about the common barriers that all organizations back and how to overcome them. So, no real root cause analysis, so solving symptoms instead of problems. No accountability, who owns the problem, who follows up. Lack of management commitment, decisions are ignored or delayed. Data overload, too much measurement, not enough action. So a factory tracks machine breakdowns but never fix the root issue. Instead, they just replace broken parts over and over, so no real improvement happens. And for me, the most important is this one, is the push mentality. reacting to events instead of shaping the future. So organizations with a push mentality are constantly reacting to problems as they arise. They wait for failures, customer complaints, or crises before taking action. This results in a short-term firefighting approach where teams focus on fixing what's already broken instead of preventing problems. So a company reacts to late deliveries only when customers start complaining, adding temporary fixes instead of addressing why delays keep happening. Now, things that can help improvement. Every analysis should lead to a defined action. Assign clear responsibilities and deadlines for corrective actions. Measure if improvements are actually working, don't assume, so measure effectiveness. So a company struggling with late deliveries, identify the root cause. Poor planning. By assigning clear accountability and tracking progress, they reduce delays by 30% in just 6 months. So check effectiveness. It's like those pictures before and after doing some kind of treatment, okay? And for me, the most important is this one, pull mentality, being pulled by a desired future. So organizations with a pull mentality don't wait for problems, they actively shape their future. They define clear long-term goals and ensure that current actions align with the desired future. Instead of being carried away by daily events, they ask, where do we want to be? What must we do now to get there? This reminds me of a Spanish philosopher that he made me think that, it made me see that normally we see the cause, the past generates the future. But like this, where do we want to be in the future? So we do a time travel into the future. And then we came back into the present. And now that future is the cause of our actions in the present. So the future is the cause. Wow. Yeah. So, yeah. So to finish, improvement. So, but this one, pull mentality is the most important. Improvement isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about staying ahead, preventing failure, and making things better every day. So stop reacting, start anticipating. Use leading indicators instead of just tracking past failures. Define a vision. What does success look like in the future? And what actions are needed today? Make improvement a habit, not a reaction. Okay? Now, okay, main challenges. Okay, based on the emails that I received before this webinar, these are the main challenges. So I received a lot of questions, but most of the questions were not related with the topic of this webinar. So these are the ones that are related with the topic of this webinar. So performance, measure, and improvement. So questions with a strong interest in how to measure, track, and demonstrate improvement, especially in a way that adds value and satisfies auditors. Interpretation of ISO 9001 requirements. So there is a need for clarity in how to interpret and apply clause 9 and how to feed that into management review and audits. We'll see that during the Q&A. Contextualization to organization type and scale. So at least one question clearly expressed concerns with applying 9001 in a small innovation-driven environment. And digitalization and practical implementation. So there's interest in how digital tools, I speak about this in the Q&A, and flexibility in documentation can support implementation and simplify processes. Okay, so conclusion. So to conclude, measurement and analysis should be aided by proper tools to present the data and proper environment for evaluating the information. Analysis and evaluation only tells us if there is an opportunity to improve. They don't tell us what to change to improve. Improvement is of paramount importance. The context is always changing and interested parties become more demanding. And to make the whole process easier and faster, you can use 𝗏𝗲𝗏's ISO 9001 Premium Documentation Toolkit. Here's the link with more details, okay? I'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our toolkit expert, okay? He'll explain you how toolkit works and show you any document you'd like to see, okay? Now, right. So about the Q&A. So before starting the Q&A, so just to leave you the links for a book that I'm the author of a book published by 𝗏𝗲𝗏 about ISO 9001, discover ISO 9001 through practical examples. Perhaps it could help you and your project. It's very practical, not much theory, but with the development of a case study. An example, I invite you to check. I invite you to check the book. I invite you also to check our courses. So the Foundations course, the Lead Implementer course, the Internal Auditor course, and the Lead Auditor course. So, okay, now just to mention before we begin the Q&A session, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about ISO 9001 directly. Just send me an email and I'll answer as quick as I can. If you have to leave before this Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. So, okay, let's see. So, question from Brandy. Could you elaborate on how the selection of KPIs differs when focusing on strategic versus operational levels? Specifically, what are some examples of KPIs that might be critical at the strategic level, but less relevant at the operational level, and vice versa? No, I don't think I cannot agree with your statement. What are some examples of KPIs that might be critical at the strategic level, but less relevant at the operational level, and vice versa? No, there must always be an alignment between operational levels and strategic operational KPIs and strategic KPIs. For me, I see it this way. For example, let me provide you as an example. There's a saying that is something like this: if the customer doesn't care about the price, the retailer shouldn't care about the cost. What I mean with this is just to introduce this example. Imagine a company, okay? Imagine a company that wants to be considered the most innovative company in the market, a company that wants to win customers because they have very good products, but very good here in terms of very innovative products. And that company, for that company, doesn't make sense if they start or if they consider as strategic KPIs KPIs regarding costs. Okay, doesn't make sense because there's not an alignment. So what I do is I list all my processes and I determine the KPIs for each process. Okay, then based on the answer to this set of questions, like who are our key customers, our target customers? Why do they buy from us? From that perspective, or from that approach, I look into what indicators in the process, what KPIs in the process allow me make my company as an assessed machine to deliver what the customer wants. And those are my strategic KPIs. Okay, so for example, there's an old, I use that example in many webinars here. It's like this. At the end of the day, you don't say in your company something like, wow, there was no power failure today. Oh, that's fantastic. No, because it's something that we expect. We don't want power failures, and we expect that's the normal, that we don't have power failures. And so those kind of indicators, are indicators that those kind of indicators are operational level indicators, are indicators that if you are excellent at them, customers couldn't care less, okay? Because they don't see any beneficial for them. And so for operational level KPIs, you just need to be efficient. You don't need to be excellent, okay? But for strategic KPIs, are KPIs that if you are excellent, customers will say, wow, these guys are good, okay? So that's how I make the difference. Okay, sorry if today I'm not in my best day, but this is a fantastic topic, Brandy, fantastic question, okay? I would like to have more time and draw some ideas about this, okay? Mesh asks, in an integrated system, that is integrated system, okay, integrated management system, I would expect KPIs to be many, right? Also, being an integrated management system, if you find that some requirement like policy is not integrated, would it be a non-conformity, like if the organization has split policies instead of one policy? The fact that in an integrated management system, not all policies are integrated, that's not a non-conformity. That's a decision of the company, okay, of the company. So what I see is, if I'm looking at a company, a bigger company, okay. No. First, if I'm looking into a small medium enterprise with an integrated management system, normally what they have is just one person taking care of the integrated management system, okay. And so most of everything is integrated. But in some big companies, you will see different people taking care of different things, okay. And even sometimes there are big wars between them. And so, okay, they may have some policies that are common, but some other policies are different. So something like, for example, imagine having an integrated, the same policy for ISO 9001 and ISO 27001 regarding risks. It's not impossible, but it's difficult, because ISO 27001 is much more demanding, and I don't think that ISO 27001 focus a lot in opportunities, okay, risks with a positive side, no. So yeah, okay, so I think I answered this one, okay, and okay. Now, I have a question here from Oleg. Oleg asked, what evidence can be presented to the ISO auditor for improvement? Types of KPIs. So to satisfy an ISO 9001-2015 auditor regarding improvement, you must provide a clear chain of evidence that you measure what matters. So KPIs aligned with objectives. You analyze results regularly. You act on findings, corrective actions. You track the effectiveness of those actions. Evidence must be documented, current, and traceable to show that continual improvement is a working reality, not just an intention. Okay. Ricardo, he asked, what about integration with digitalization? So clause 9 requires organizations to monitor, measure, analyze, and evaluate performance and to use this information to drive improvement. Clause 10. So digital tools can automate, accelerate, and enhance these activities in ways that manual systems cannot. So real-time data collection and monitoring, for example, use of Internet of Things sensors, ERP systems, or EMES tools to capture process data automatically, advanced analytics for root cause analysis, automated KPI tracking. Digital systems can track KPIs over time, auto-generate reports, flag underperformance, workflow automation for corrective actions. So a lot of, I remember the first time that I used artificial intelligence just to list potential topics to investigate the bad performance of specific equipment. Even the experts were saying, "Wow!" And the experts that I was working with, most of the topics they couldn't, they would never understand that. Jacqueline asked, "What sample tools, methods to measure performance or improvement?" So you can use KPIs, measurable values that reflect how effectively a process or system achieves its objectives. You can use process control charts, SPC, statistical process control, visual tools to monitor process variation over time. You can use internal audit results. Yeah. You can review inputs and outputs, so periodic analysis of data on quality performance, objectives, risks, and opportunities. Okay. Yes, Pauline, you will get the presentation. Yeah. Now, let me see. I had just to finish 2 more slides. So Jamila asked, measurement of process improvement that is linked to financial growth. So I understood this as a request for examples. Okay. So something like right first time increase leads to cost reduction, leads to margin improvement, leads as a financial impact, leads to, okay, reduce scrap and rework costs, fewer quality incidents and delays, improved gross margin. And the other one is lead time reduction, faster cash flow, revenue acceleration. So financial impact, something like shorter delivery times, increased customer satisfaction, ability to handle more orders, higher turnover. Supplier lead time variability reduction. So supplier lead time variability reduction leads to inventory reduction, leads to working capital improvement, leads to, as a financial impact, reduced safety stock, lower inventory holding cost, increased free cash flow. So these are examples, okay? And the last one is, here. Peter asked, please provide clarity on what specifically needs to be reported under each of the following management review points. 9.3.2C2, okay, so the extent to which quality objectives have been met. And 9.3.2C3, process performance and conformity. And 9.3.2C5, monitoring and measurement results, taking into consideration internal audits are already covered in 9.3.2C6 audit results. So Peter is saying that, okay, aren't we messing or having the same things, measuring the same thing several times? I would say, so 9.3.2C2, the extent to which quality objectives have been met, this point focuses on the progress and achievement of the quality objectives established under clause 6.2, okay? For me, it's very clear. So these objectives should be strategic in nature, reflecting the commitments expressed in the quality policy, such as customer satisfaction, continual improvement, compliance, or operational excellence. What happens is that many organizations mistakenly treat this as a repetition of clause 9.3.2c3, which refers to process performance and conformity of products and services. And this confusion often arises because they treat the sum of all process level KPIs as quality objectives, when in fact, quality objectives should be cascaded top down from the strategic level, not built bottom up from the operational layer. Okay. Now, okay, process performance indicators covered in 9.3.2c3 support the achievement of quality objectives, but are not the same thing. Reviewing quality objectives mean assessing whether the organization is progressing towards its declared quality ambition, not merely whether each process is green. Okay, and 9.3.2c3, process performance and conformity of products and services. Okay, this refers to the performance of the organization's key processes and the degree of conformity of products and services to requirements. And the last one, 9.3.2c5, monitoring and measurement results, excluding audits which are covered under 9.3 to C6. This point refers to results from regular monitoring and measurement activities that are not internal audits, such as operational or product monitoring or customer feedback. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, now let's see here. Okay, so I think I've answered all your questions. So our time is up. Okay, so let's wrap up this webinar. Just a few words before we finish. I hope I was able to give you some ideas regarding this ISO 9001 monitoring, measurement, analysis, and improvement. You can ask me anything about ISO 9001 directly by email. You can also download this presentation deck from our website or take a look at video tutorials and documentation templates. We'll send you the email with all the necessary links. Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey, so I would kindly ask to you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You will receive a link to the recording. And if you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short survey now, and the link to the presentation will be posted on our event page in a few minutes. That will be all. That will be all. Thank you for your participation. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and I'm sorry for my status is not the best. Okay, so have a nice day.